What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Commentating Christian YouTube channel, where today we're going to recap match week 22 in the Premier League. So we are back with the Premier League recap after some midweek matches from last week. The FA Cup took place this past weekend, but we're back with some more Premier League action this weekend. So you guys know the drill by now. I separate the Premier League recap into 3 different categories. We start with the mid-card, and then other smaller results, and then we talk about the main event for the week. So let's kick it off in the mid-card as Chelsea have a great start to life in the Premier League under new manager Liam Rossinior, as they got a 2-0 win over Brentford. João Pedro got his 7th Premier League goal of the season in the 26th minute. Cole Palmer then doubled the lead for Chelsea in the second half from the penalty spot. That's now Palmer's 4th Premier League goal of the season so far, but it's got to be said, half of those have come from the penalty spot. So with this win, Chelsea climbed back to 6th place in the Premier League. Meanwhile, Brentford, who were in the top 5 not too long ago, have dropped to 7th. Moving on, as Liverpool and Burnley drew in a 1-1 draw. Now it's got to be said the outcome of this game would have been a lot different had Dominic Szoboszlai converted his penalty, but he absolutely skied it in the 32nd minute. However, Florian Wirtz would put Liverpool ahead 1-0 as he scored his 3rd Premier League goal of the campaign. That's now 5 goal contributions in his last 6 games in all competitions. However, Burnley would equalize in the second half thanks to Marcus Edwards. So with this result, Liverpool do remain 4th in the Premier League on 36 points. But it's got to be said, only 4 points separate 4th from 10th, and we all know Burnley is still in the drop zone in 19th. Moving on, as West Ham United upset Tottenham Hotspurs 2-1 as they drew them closer to the drop zone. So a couple of debuts in this game for both teams. Conor Gallagher got his first start with Spurs, and for West Ham, Tati Castellanos did start up top for the first time. But it was Somerville that would open the scoring for West Ham in the 15th minute. Castellanos did have a chance to double the lead for West Ham not too long after that, but somehow couldn't put his header on target from just inside the 6-yard box. Into the second half we go, where Christian Romero would equalize for Spurs off of a brilliant header, but late in stoppage time, Callum Wilson would get the game-winning goal for the Hammers to give them all 3 points and a little bit of hope to rise above the relegation zone. Now this was West Ham's first win in the Premier League since November 8th, and it was much needed as they are now only 5 points behind Nottingham Forest in 17th. Meanwhile, Spurs themselves remain in 14th, only 5 points clear of Forest in 17th. Alright, last game in the mid-card as Arsenal once again have failed to put more distance between themselves and the chasing pack with another 0-0 draw. So 0-0 between them and 17th place Nottingham Forest. It's got to be said, Matt Sells did come up big for Forest, making 3 saves in this game to help Forest salvage 1 point. So with this draw and West Ham's win that we just talked about, Forest are now only 5 points above the relegation zone, and Arsenal are still first in the Premier League, only 7 points ahead of 2nd and 3rd place. So that was it for the mid-card. Let's move on to other smaller results, and we'll kick it off with a 2-1 win for Sunderland over Crystal Palace. Sunderland did go into this game without a win in the last 6 Premier League games, not having won since December 14th, but all of their players that were competing in the African Cup of Nations have now returned to the squad, so this has got to be a huge boost for Sunderland. Meanwhile, Palace came into this game with an even worse record, winless in their last 9, not having won in the Premier League since December 7th. And obviously we all know that their club captain Mark Guehi did complete his transfer to Manchester City. Nevertheless, Yeremy Pino did put Palace up 1-0 in the 30th minute, but then only 3 minutes after that, Enzo Lefebvre would equalize for Sunderland, and then in the 71st minute, Brian Brobby would score the game-winning goal in the 71st minute off a brilliant finish to give the Black Cats all 3 points. So with this win, Sunderland do climb back up to the top 10 as they are now in 9th place, and Crystal Palace have dropped to 13th. But it's got to be said they're only 5 points behind Sunderland. Moving on, as Leeds United snapped Fulham's 6-game unbeaten streak. Now Lucas Nmeka scored the game-winning goal late on in stoppage time to give Leeds United the 1-0 victory. It also gave Leeds their first win in the Premier League since December 20th. Now this was Nmeka's 5th goal of the season for Leeds, and with this win, Leeds are still in 16th, 3 points above Forest in 17th, and 8 above the drop zone. Meanwhile, Fulham United are in 11th. Moving on, as Wolverhampton Wanderers have once again got points this past weekend as they drew 0-0 versus a very impressive Newcastle United team. Now this is the 4th week in a row where Wolves have picked up some points, and it's got to be said this is a very disappointing result for the Magpies as they controlled every statistic in this game. Now it's got to be said Jose Assad did come up big for Wolves when called upon, making 2 brilliant saves. So that's now 6 points out of a possible 12 in the last 4 games for Wolves. Not great, but a lot better than they were doing at the start of the season. Nevertheless, Wolves still remain bottom of the Premier League on 8 points now. They're almost to that double-digit mark. Meanwhile, Newcastle are still in 8th. Moving on, as another team in the top 3 have dropped points this past weekend, as Aston Villa lost to Everton 1-0. Everton traveled away to Villa Park with one of their great legends in the game in Jack Grealish and managed to escape with all 3 points. Now, Everton did score 1 goal off of only 0.40 expected goals. Everton striker Tamoi Berry did score his 4th Premier League goal of the season. Now it's got to be said, Aston Villa goalkeeper Emi Martinez should have done a lot better with this chance, as he somewhat blundered the initial chance that spilled to Berry and then chipped the Aston Villa goalkeeper. Now thanks to this goal and this win, Everton are still in 10th place and Aston Villa are still in 3rd, still tied on points with Man City and still 7 points behind the league leaders Arsenal. Alright, last result in other smaller results before we move on to the main event, and it was the last result in this match week as Brighton and Bournemouth drew 1-1 on Monday afternoon. So Bournemouth start their crusade without their star player Antoine Semenyo following his move to Manchester City, and they did look lively in this game. Tavernier even scored from the penalty spot early on to give Bournemouth the advantage. That's now 5 goals to go along with his 3 assists in the Premier League for Tavernier. However, in the second half, Greece international Karalamos Kostebos equalized in the 91st minute to save Brighton 1 point. Now this was a spectacular overhead kick goal from the 18-year-old. If you guys haven't seen it yet, do yourselves a favor and go check it out, as this was only the Greece's international's 2nd goal of the season so far. But with this 1-1 draw, Brighton remain in 12th place and Bournemouth are in 15th. So moving on to the main event for the week, as it's got to be talked about, it was that Manchester derby between Manchester United and Manchester City. United's first game in the Premier League since the departure of Ruben Amorim. Up steps Michael Carrick, and in only his 4th game in charge of United ever, he secured a historic win and 3 points for the Red Devils. Now, a lot of positives in this game for United. They reverted back to a back 4. Bruno Fernandes reverted back to his preferred position of the number 10. Kobe Mainoo went back to the starting lineup alongside Casemiro in midfield. Amad Diallo and Brian Mbeumo back from African Cup of Nations. Now, it's got to be said it is very simple fixes, but it is back to the basics for Man United, and it very well did pay off. However, let's not lose sight of the fact that Man City were missing some key players due to injury in this game. No Nico Gonzalez, no John Stones, no Joseph Gvardiol, no Ruben Diaz, and no Savinho. Now, because of this, United did look dangerous throughout the entire game, but they broke the deadlock in the 65th minute thanks to a beautiful counterattack finished off by Mbeumo, scoring his 7th goal of the season. Patrick Dorgu then doubled the lead for United in the 76th minute, and it's got to be said he is really enjoying life since reverting to that right midfield role in this 4-2-3-1 system. Now, throughout multiple stretches of this game, like I mentioned earlier, United were absolutely dominant. Some of their passing performed in this game was particularly impressive, where honestly they did look like the superior side and looked like a prime Barcelona, or even dare I say a prime Manchester City. I think this just goes to show how toxic the atmosphere was under Man United thanks to Ruben Amorim, but with him being gone now, this must feel like a huge weight lifted off the shoulders of many players as they can once again start enjoying their football and enjoying some quality results like they did in this game. So with this win, United do climb back to 5th in the Premier League standings, and City do remain in 2nd, still 7 points behind league leaders Arsenal. And just like the end of match week 21, match week 22 concludes with all teams in the top 4 failing to get a victory. Meanwhile, 5th to 12th place in the Premier League is only separated by 5 points. So that's going to do it for the Premier League recap for this week. As always, guys, thank you so much for coming back to my channel and checking out the Premier League recap. I really do appreciate you guys' support. If you enjoy this type of content, please leave a like, consider subscribing or commenting, and I'll see you next week as we recap match week 23. As always, guys, thank you so much once again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and God bless.